My name is Megan Farrell. I work for Pipework and Associates. I'm the head voicer here, and today we're doing a little video to tell you about some of the pipes you'll find in a pipe organ, how we voice them to sound the way that they do, and we'll learn how to clean a reed. Over here we have 4 different types of families of pipes from a pipe organ. We have the principal, we have the flutes, we have reeds, and we have strings. So the string pipe is a little more narrow and with a smaller mouth, and that gives you the tone of a bow being drug across a violin strings. The next pipe we have is a reed pipe, specifically a clarinet. It has a lot of moving parts, and when it's in the pipe organ, it sits like this. And inside there's a shallot and a reed that lays against there. And when the wind goes through, the reed vibrates back and forth, creating a clarinet tone. And specifically to tune this pipe, you have a wire here that moves up and down, which gives you darker and tones and such. But for fine tuning, we use this tuning collar up here to either elongate the pipe or make it shorter. The next pipe we have is a bourdon. It's a fatter pipe. This one has kind of like a hat on top that moves up and down to tune. And then you have a wood flute. This one does not have a stopper, but most wood pipes have a stopper in the top, which is how they are tuned. It has leather around it, so when you stick it in the pipe, it seals it off, and it creates kind of like a hollow, darker sound. And then our last pipe is the principal, which is pretty much found in every organ. It is the base of the organ. It's what a lot of the choir sings to. So now I'm going to show you a little bit of how I voice an unvoiced pipe. This is straight from the pipe maker. All the parameters of this pipe have been chosen by me. So the first thing that we look at is how the diameter of the pipe. I need to let them know how big to make this diameter, which affects how big the mouth will be. I have ordered it that this distance here is a quarter of the circumference up here. So that all goes into how the note sounds and the color and the tone and everything like that. The other thing that we select is what the pipe is made out of. Most pipes are made of an alloy of 60% tin and 40% lead. This one, however, is made of just tin, and that's why I have gloves on, because that will leave a lot of fingerprints if I do not take precaution to do that. So let's just explain some things about this pipe. There's a couple parameters that I have to deal with when I do the voicing here. So first, these things that I'm moving around, we just like those nice and straight. They're the pipe's ears. That helps project sound outward. The other thing we have is the upper lip, which is this edge right here, and the lower lip, which is this edge right here. And inside the pipe mouth, this is the languid. That can be moved up and down to control promptness and slowness. The other area that I have to deal with is the toe, which controls how much wind goes in and out, ultimately controlling the volume. So the first thing we address with this pipe is obviously it needs to get wind. So the first thing we want to do is dress the toe. You can see it doesn't look too pretty right now, and it's a very small opening. So that's not going to make a whole lot of sound. Not so good. So the first thing we want to do is start by cutting away some of this excess metal. Okay. And then, again, just clearing some more metal out. So now we have a nice edge around the hole. That helps with the air entering the pipe because my objective is to get the air from point A to make the sound as clean and clear as possible. So anything that's obstructing or isn't like a clean surface, a nice smooth area, that will cause a problem in the tone later on. So after I have that done, we can see how it sounds. Still not so good, just a little louder. So the other thing I do as a voicer is I calculate how far I need this opening to be, from the bottom lip here to the upper lip here. Right now there's not so much distance there, and I think that's why it doesn't sound so good. So the other thing I can calculate with this tool is I know I need the cut up to be 1/4 of the mouth width. So this tool does all the math for me. And when I flip it over this distance, I can mark my cut up, just like that. So now begins the process of taking away that excess metal. And this is just a simple X-Acto knife. And we just want to gently cut away that metal up to the line I've just made. Over and over. Taking great care not to hit the languid. Okay, almost up to the top here. And it's always important to get to the line, but not to go over it, and you want it as straight as possible. Because again, we want that wind sheet to hit this as nice and gracefully as possible. So, there's what it looks like. Okay. And the other thing we do at this point is we put a little skive on the upper lip, and that's just going to give that wind sheet just a nice flat, smooth, and thin area to make the tone we are after. Just with the back of my knife, gently scraping. You can kind of see the shiny part there. So after that, dump this metal out. Well, now let's see how it sounds. So there's some life there. Now at this point, I would address the upper lip and the lower lip. The objective here is to make sure when I look down the pipe like this, the upper lip is just passing the lower lip. So when I look down, I see they're pretty much about even. Can you see that? Okay. So what we'll do is I have assorted spatulas and stuff like that I just kind of put in there and gently pull towards myself. Make sure it's even across. So now let's see how it sounds. And by doing that, I made the speech a little quicker. So the next area is I address how big the flue is. It's kind of uneven on this side, a little bigger, so we're just going to even that out. I'm going to leave it about the size that it is, because from experience, I generally believe that's where it would like to be. So it's still a little slow, but now that we have everything lined up, that's the most important part, because I know that everything's in line. There's only a few other options as to why the pipe won't speak fully and properly right now. One of those being the languid is too high. So I have to, if you can see in here, this little metal piece above the upper lip, or I'm sorry, above the lower lip right here. I'm going to take one of these brass rods And I'm just going to give it a little tap to push it downward on both sides, because it's important that that stays even across. So now it's a little more consistent. So let's just take it a little bit further and we'll knock it all the way down so we can hear what it sounds like when it's too quick. I think that. So it's starting to burble. It's still not very happy. So now what I'll do is I will put a smaller rod in the toe and then just gently knock it back up. So it sounds pretty gritty. That means the wind sheet doesn't have any direction. It's kind of coming through the flueway and just hitting the upper lip. So in order to fix that, we use these things called nicks, and that simply goes right between where the languid is and the lower lip. And they're just, let's say, like little race tracks that help the wind go up and hit that upper lip just the way we want it to. It takes away a lot of the turbulence, and it's important that, again, everything is even. And I'm just gonna put five small little nicks in there, and then we'll see what it sounds like. And that's pretty good for voicing on the table, and then the next step would be to put it on the voicing jack and get the speech with the chest underneath it and get it right where it wants to be. So after the pipe has been table voiced, we bring it over to the voicing jack with its neighbors, and then we see how it sounds. So it sounds a little quiet, so then I would go over here and just kind of make it a little bit louder by increasing the size of the toe hole. So now it sounds kind of exactly like its neighbors, which is what you want. You want the whole thing to kind of come together to get one wholesome sound. So now that we have the pipe on the voicing jack, one of the first things we do is put it into tune. That's the most important part, because if a pipe is not in tune, I may be hearing other things that's not really in the speech. It may be just speaking out of turn because it's not in tune. So we use this meter right here as a reference point, and I'm just going to rough it into tune for right now. So now we're going to move on and talk about reeds. They generally take up about 1/3 of a pipe organ's specification or stop list. And like I mentioned before, the reed has a lot more moving parts. This is how it would sit in the organ. This is used for tuning. This moves up and down just like a tuning collar. And then on the inside of this, we take off the boot, flip it upside down, and just a couple things about this. You have the block, and this is the actual pipe. The block has a tuning wire that runs through it, and when it is in the organ, one of my jobs when I go to tune is to move this up and down to get it in the right color and tone. So then we can take to do the cleaning process, we remove the tuning wire, and then you have a wedge, the reed itself, we call this a tongue sometimes, and this, the shallot. So now I'll show you how I take this apart. The pair of pliers, I pull out the wedge first, just like that. And then the reed is free, and you can see the tarnish and the corrosion on that, because all of this is made of brass. So then with my pliers again, we can wiggle the shallot out. So this is where the reed vibrates against, and the wind passes through here, creating tone. So then normally this would then be washed and cleaned, and then this is made out of spotted metal as well, so it would become shiny. So now I'll show you how we clean these. This is all brass, like I said, and it's very important that this surface where the reed lays against be very flat, and all this dirt and tarnish that we get over time is removed. And to do that, we take a very high grit sandpaper. I think this is 1200 grit, and we just gently, keeping it very flat against this granite block, move it back and forth. And we flip it over, and you can see it's just nearly as shiny as it would be new. But we still have some of this black corrosion over there, so we'll give it another couple passes. It doesn't take much because you're just getting the dirt off. You don't want to change the integrity of the metal. So there we go. That would be a clean shallot. So now we'll move on to how we clean the reed. This can take a little more time depending how much corrosion, if there was water damage, you know, assorted things like that. So all we do is we use a car polish, use a microfiber rag, and gently just brush it on. I don't want to put any pressure, not a whole lot of pressure. It's more about just agitating what's on there and removing it with the polish itself. Because these reeds, if you can look on this flat surface, they have a curve at the very tip, or sometimes they have a curve in the middle of it. And that all plays into what the tone is, and that's where a lot of the craft and art form comes from, because every voicer does it differently. Some prefer a lot of tip curve, but basically what that does, picture my finger as the tuning wire. When you move the tuning wire up and down, you change the curve as it lays on the shallot. So we'll go back to brushing this polish on here, just like that. And sometimes if it's really dirty, we'll go like this. I'm still not putting any pressure on it. It's more of just a light hold, just to really get a little bit more polish on there. And you gotta rub it back and forth. So you can see there, it's starting to get a little shinier. Starting to. Let's give you another glimpse of it here. There, but it's so we'll probably just give it another pass down here at the bottom. Let me wipe it off. There you have it. Okay. So after that is all done, the next step in the process, to put it back together, we wipe it down with some denatured alcohol first, and then place the shallot back in, which has been marked to a certain height that it is supposed to sit into this block, because the height of the shallot also plays a huge part in the tone and the tuning length and all that other stuff. Put that in there right about like that. We want to make sure where the square is, where the wedge goes, that this all lines up, because if the reed doesn't fit in right, it won't play correctly. Then the next step would be to lay the reed on top. And just because this is my preference, I like to leave it a little proud so that when we put the wedge in, when I push down or hammer the wedge in, the reed will be parallel, or flush with the top of the shallot. So then I'm just going to tap in the wedge, make sure the reed is tight, place the tuning wire back on, and there you have it, a cleaned reed. So now that the reed has been cleaned and properly assembled again, we're ready to tune it for the first time on the jack. And just so you can hear the beats on the video, we're going to use this tuner, which plays the note E, which is what this pipe is. And we'll give it a rough tune. Softer. And the way we do that is this wire can either get knocked up for loud or down for soft, and we would move the scroll in the opposite direction. So if we move the wire up, the scroll comes down. So we're just going to make it a little bit louder. So now we're going to make it a little bit softer. And you can tell that got quite a bit softer. And of course, we wouldn't leave the scrolls like this. It's very important to keep this all lined up because any gaps in here or anything will directly affect the tuning. We try our best to keep these in flat, good, round scrolling shape. And this pipe over here, this is just a different style of tuning. This pipe has kind of like a tuning collar. This piece moves up and down for fine tuning, just like the scroll does. This up here is used for a little bit more of a color and tone, but this whole thing moves as one unit. And again, down here it has a wire that we use to tune it as well. darker crumb horn kind of tone. So let's view how we make this one louder and softer. And again, I do that by either raising this or lowering this opposite from what I do at the tuning wire. Just because I feel like that's not where it wants to be. So here we are in the pipe shop. Just to give you an idea of what kind of goes on in here. This is a mixture, a new mixture that's laid out into its breaks and pitches and stuff like that. This is all new pipe work, unvoiced. This is waiting for me to go through the process with each one of these pipes, even these little ones right here. You know, we have all different sizes of pipes and they all get the same unique treatment. And that is what we do for new pipe work. And over here, this is an oboe for one of our upcoming jobs that we refurbished. Right now, we have the reeds cleaned, the pipes are clean, they have been, finish has been applied to them. The next step in their process is to repair these scrolls. And this is the way that these pipes are specifically tuned. Instead of a tuning collar, these are generally rolled down, and to change the length of the resonator, you would move that scroll up and down to change the tuning. And over here, these pipes had the scrolls completely ripped out because they were scrolled down too far. So what we did is we replaced the bell with new so that they can be re-scrolled appropriately for the new organ. So I'm going to talk about tuning collars, which is very, very critical on keeping the organ in tune. Every flue pipe gets one of these tuning slides or tuning collars, which is carefully selected from assorted kits of all different sizes. For every pipe, there is a tuning collar. Every flue pipe has a tuning collar. So basically what that means is you select a size that is close to the diameter of the pipe, and it's important that you want to put a little pressure on it, but obviously if it's too loose, it's just going to go straight down the pipe. So it's important that we have enough tension on the tuning collar to keep it where we tune it. So if I was going to tune it, it would take me a couple taps to get it to where I want it. We don't want a sudden drop in pitch or anything like that. So speaking of every pipe getting a tuning collar, this is the biggest tuning collar we have in our shop right now, and this is the smallest tuning collar to give you a really good scale of how many tuning collars we actually have and how many we use, because for every rank there's 61 pipes, so that means every rank gets 61 tuning collars.
Thank you for watching our video, and I'm Megan Farrell again. This was Patrick Murphy and Associates, and we appreciate you taking an interest in what we do here.